Hey, I'm Mitchell Morley. Welcome to the second video I'm making on vMix Replay. If you're planning to follow along at home, hands-on, and you have not already downloaded my project files, please go do that before we get started. Link is in the description, mitchellmorley.com/templates. Thank you, and enjoy the video. In the first video, we covered how vMix Replay conceptually and technically works, how to get set up with vMix Replay using my project bundle, how to use keyboard and mouse controls for controlling the replay timeline, clipping, and playing clips out. You may have noticed there are a few things about keyboard and mouse controls that were not ideal. For one, it's really slow. You have to take your mouse and you need to drag it all around the screen to do basic things. On top of that, it's really imprecise. You notice this when we would scrub forward and back on the timeline, or click and drag a clip speed or clip in or out handle to adjust it. And lastly, it's really tedious. Like, you have to perform repetitive, simple steps that can be kind of frustrating and cause mistakes if you go fast. So you gotta go slow, take it step by step, and think through what you're doing, which is great for learning the basics, and that's why we did that in episode 1. But now that we're getting up to show speed to get ready for work in the field, it's time to go faster and do things a better way. So in this video, I'm going to teach you how I use vMix Replay. If I were trying to use keyboard and mouse controls, I would have absolutely drowned in this sort of scenario where I needed to come up and finish off a clip and clip something new and edit that clip and get the package rolled out all in a very short period of time, like you see here. So how did I pull off a faster speed than using keyboard and mouse? Well, the answer to that is Streamdex plus BitFocus Companion. Streamdex you may be familiar with from the world of streamers, and BitFocus Companion is a tool that lets you connect your Stream Deck to control other software and devices with your buttons. You can download Companion at bitfocus.io/companion, clicking on the download button. BitFocus does require you to create a login, but believe me, it's well worth it. Once you do, go to Downloads and then click on Companion, the Download tab, and then click on Stable, and then click on Windows. This will start the download. I recommend you open my vMix bundle before you open Companion. Then install and open Companion. You'll be presented with this little window. Go ahead and click on Launch GUI. That's GUI. Next, you'll be presented with this little welcome window. Just click Cancel because we're going to go through it ourselves. First thing, go to the Import Export tab, click on the Import button, and load my Companion config that I provided. Then click on the Reset and Import button. When the config loads, you'll be presented with that window again, and again, click on Cancel. Let's take a look around. Click on the Connections tab. Here you can see the devices and software that Companion is connecting to. The only connection we have configured, and it's the only one we need right now, is the local vMix. Click on it. You shouldn't need to change anything here, but in the future, if you're doing remote vMix Replay work, this is how you could enter an IP address for a client's PC to connect to it. If you aren't seeing a green check mark in the Connections tab on Companion, first make sure vMix is open. If it is open, then click on Settings, go to the Web Controller tab, and check the following options. TCP API Enabled needs to be checked. If Enable Enhanced Security on Web and TCP API is checked, try unchecking it and seeing if this fixes your connection issue. Once you've made changes, click on OK. If the connection is still not working, join my Discord, shoot me the question, and we'll figure it out together. Next up, the Surfaces tab. Here you can see the surfaces, aka button devices, connected to Companion. It's meant to be used with Stream Decks, but if you don't have one, it's okay. Companion comes with a built-in emulator, which you see listed here. To access the emulator, click on Emulator in the side menu. Then click on Emulator. Now you have an emulated button deck that you can use right from your web browser. If you do have Stream Deck devices, make sure they're plugged in via USB now. Then, go to your system tray and exit the Stream Deck software. This needs to be closed in order for Companion to properly connect to your Stream Decks. Then, click on Rescan USB to see your Stream Deck devices appear in the connected list. Whether you're using a physical Stream Deck or the emulator, click on the Settings for that device and change its startup page to 1. You're going to need this for the section ahead. Now it's time to take a look through our buttons. The config I've provided comes with 2 pages of buttons. The first is for clipping and the second is for playback. There are essentially 3 parts to a button in Companion, and you can view and edit these parts by clicking on one of the buttons. The first part of a button is its appearance. That is the text displayed, its font size, its font color, the background color. Optionally, you can make a background image on it, and a couple other minor details. The second part of a button is its actions. Actions are what a button does when you use it. Now, pushing a button actually has 2 parts to it. There's the press, and then there's the release. And for each half of that, you can assign actions. For this button, when I press it down, it runs a command to play forward. And when I let go of the button, it pauses. To add actions to a button, you just click on Add Actions either in the Press Actions section or the Release Actions section. When you click on one of those, it will show you your recently used actions. If you click on the red folder, it will show you all of the nicely packaged actions you can select from in Companion. We won't be using internal in this video. Local vMix is for our vMix connection. So all of these are nicely packaged actions that we can select and configure for our vMix connection, including a good selection of replay ones. All these actions are user-friendly versions of vMix shortcut functions, but for cases where these pre-built actions don't quite do what we need, you can make use of shortcut functions yourself by using this catch-all action, run custom command. And what are these shortcut functions, you might ask? Well, behold, the vMix shortcut function reference. This webpage is the alpha and the omega. It is the keeper of lost souls, and you can use any of these functions in a Companion button with that catch-all action, run custom command, and believe me, I do. So anywhere that you see a run custom command action in my buttons, you could copy-paste the text of that function and look it up in the function reference to understand what it does. The third part of a button is feedbacks. Feedbacks are a way to take information back from the device or program you're connected to, hence the name, and do something with that information. Often, feedbacks are used to change the background color of a button to tell you that something is happening. For an example, let's take a look at a button on my playback page, Solo Replay. This button will solo monitor the audio for the Replay A input, which means you'll listen to just Replay A audio in your headphones and nothing else. This is helpful when you're clipping something that has dialogue in it and you want to focus on that audio. The only action I have on this button is to toggle whether or not that input is being soloed. So how do I know whether pressing that is toggling it on or toggling it off? Well, that's why I have a feedback on this button. This feedback tells me if the audio is being soloed on Replay A because the button will turn red if it is. It's important to note that button presses don't have to be what triggers this happening. You could go into vMix and manually solo the audio by opening the audio mixer, looking at input 4, which is Replay A, and clicking on S for solo. Now soloing is on, and when I look back at the button, boom, it's turned red. That tells me it is being soloed right now. Pressing this will turn solo off. On the flip side, if I toggle it off in vMix, and I look at my button, I know it is not being soloed right now. Pressing this button will toggle it on. Now that we understand the parts of a companion button, I'm going to demo each one of my buttons individually so that you can see how each one works and how they work together. I'm not going to be diving deep into the vMix shortcut functions that I'm using for these buttons, but I will show you how to edit some of these buttons for your own needs at the end of the video. Let's start with my clipping page. First up was playing forward, which I'm holding to play forward, and when I let go, it pauses. This is so that I can scrub to a point, pause, and mark an in. And the opposite of play forward is to play backward, which does the same thing, just in reverse, and when I let go, it pauses. I also have buttons to fast forward and fast rewind. Hold fast forward to fast forward, and let go to pause. Hold fast rewind to fast rewind, let go to pause. Lastly, I have a jump to live button, which takes the replay output and jumps it to the live, which will match what's in the upper right now. So all of these are showing live now. Next up is clipping from the timeline. Now remember I said in episode 1 that you couldn't click the mark in and mark out buttons in the replay controller if the live button were on. And I don't want to care about that anymore. So the way I made my buttons, doesn't matter what the live button looks like. So I'm gonna navigate my timeline and look for a goal. I found one, so I'm gonna back it up and press mark in. And even though the live button was on, the way I made these buttons, they just work. So I've marked an in at that point on the timeline, I play forward, I mark my out, I have my clip from the timeline. Next up is clipping from live. I have two flavors of live clipping buttons here. One is -3, the other is -5, which respectively stand for clip the last 3 seconds from live or clip the last 5 seconds from live. Now, these are two of the buttons I'm going to show you how to edit because every show and every project is different, and maybe you need 10-second clips. Or maybe you need 2-second clips or 6-second clips. Whatever your needs are, I'll show you how to adjust these later on in the video. Now I'm just waiting for a goal to get scored in the upper right. Boom, goal was scored, -3, creates a 3-second clip from live. I'll create another one here using the -5 button. Boom, now I have a 5-second clip of what just happened on live. And once you've created clips, you're going to want to edit them. I made a few ways to edit clips on my clipping page. One way is by navigating along the timeline and then updating the clip's in or out point to wherever you are. Here, I've backed up to before the endpoint of this clip and I'm going to press update endpoint to move the endpoint here. Boom, now this is the endpoint. And on the other side of the clip, if I fast forward past the out point, I can press update out to update the out point to where I am right now. Boom, now that's the out point. I also made buttons that make it easy to jump to the current endpoint or current out point of a clip so that you can adjust them. I can jump to current in to jump back to the endpoint of the clip and edit it. So I've jumped to the endpoint, I'm moving forward or backward on the timeline, and I'm updating the endpoint to the new spot. Then I can jump to current out, move forward or backward on the timeline on that end, and update the out point. Another way you can edit clips with my buttons is by jumping the in or out point forward or backward by a short amount of time. That's what the in point plus 0.5 and minus 0.5 and the out point plus 0.5 minus 0.5 buttons do. Here I'm jumping this clip's out point 0.5 seconds forward, and now back, 0.5 seconds at a time. And of course I can do the same thing with the in point of the clip. Here I'm moving it back, and then forward, 0.5 seconds at a time. Next, I want to assign camera, speed, and possibly labels to my clips. The camera assignment buttons are cam 1 through cam 8. Obviously we only have 2 cameras here, but you see how this scales. So you simply press cam 2 to assign cam 2 to the clip, or press cam 1 to assign cam 1 to the clip. My clipping buttons assign a speed of 100% to clips when they're created, but you can assign a clip speed of 50%, 75%, or 100% by using these buttons. You can also assign a label to a clip, and the one I've built will simply apply the label cool to the selected clip. Lastly, I made buttons to navigate up and down your list of clips. Up goes up, down goes down. Moving right along to the playback page, starting with play out selected, which will play out whatever clip or clips that you have selected. Next to it is play out all, which will play out all clips in your bin. I also have controls which I use pretty sparingly myself to control playback while I'm playing out clips. Here I'm rewinding a clip while I'm playing it out, and when I let go, it plays forward again so I can re-watch that part of the action. Similarly, I have these buttons to fast forward and fast rewind, which will resume normal playing when you let go. These are better for longer clips, but you can use them in short ones sometimes too. The change direction button accomplishes mostly the same thing as you see here. It just toggles going forward, going back, going forward, and it's another way you can repeat a piece of the action while you're playing out the clip. I also have buttons to change the playback speed while you're playing out clips. 50 goes to 50, 75 to 75, and 100 back to 100. And lastly on this page, I have buttons to solo monitor audio from either my program or my inputs and from my replay drive. Here, I'm going to place replay A into my preview so that you can clearly see which audio goes to which video. So I can press solo program to listen into the live feed. And I can press solo replay to listen to my replay audio. And if I really need to, I can listen to both at the same time by toggling both on. Sweet, sweet music. Before I cut you loose to practice, I'm going to show you how to edit and adjust my buttons for your needs. I will warn you, there is no undo button in Companion, so you'll need to be extra careful to not overwrite or delete any buttons on accident. For that reason, I highly recommend saving as you go. Saving your work in Companion means exporting your Companion config from the Import/Export tab. Click on Export, keep all checkboxes checked, and then click Download. By default, Companion names your config after your computer's name, so just go to your Downloads folder and rename that file to whatever you want. Now that we've saved our work, I'll show you how to move buttons around. Let's go to Buttons and then go to a new page, like page 3, and call it something new, like Test Page. Then we'll go back to page 1 to copy a button. One way to copy a button is with the typical keyboard shortcut, which is Control-C on Windows. Click the button you want to copy, hit Control-C. Then, go back to the new page, click the spot where you want to paste it, and then press Control-V. The same goes for cut and paste via keyboard shortcuts. Click the button, hit Control-X to cut it, click the new spot, Control-V to paste. To delete a button, click on it and then press backspace. That'll bring up a confirmation window, and pressing OK would delete it. I don't recommend using these, but there are also buttons you can click in Companion to copy, move, and delete buttons. I've gone ahead and copy-pasted this whole set of buttons that I'm going to show you how to edit. First, we'll start with the clipping from live buttons, which are currently -3 and -5, and I'll change those to -4 and -6. There are 3 potential changes to make on a button to update it: the appearance, the actions, and the feedbacks. The appearance is easy, you just change the text out here from -3 to -4. For actions, we're just going to change any usage of 3 to 4, which is just this one place on this button. And lastly, if there were any feedbacks, we would make sure to update those, but this button doesn't have any. And we'll quickly do the same thing for -5, changing the appearance from -5 to -6, and the actions from 5 seconds to 6. Next up are the assign clip speed buttons. By the way, you could change the text on these from event to clip, that's just a holdover. Let's change from 50 to 30, 75 to 60, and leave 100 where it is. As per usual, the appearance change is pretty easy, just change the text from event 50% to event 30%. Then for the actions, we only need to change the action on top of this list. 0.5 was 50%, so 0.3 will be 30%. There are no feedbacks on this button, so we're done with it. And we'll quickly do the same to change 75 to 60 by changing the appearance from 75 to 60 and then the action from 75% to 60%. For the buttons that move the in and out points forward or back by half a second, changes will depend a little bit on your project. Let's say that I want to change these buttons to make changes to in and out points in 1 second increments instead of half. So we change the appearance and then we go to the actions. The units for moving the selected endpoint is actually in frames rather than seconds. So if your project is in 60 frames per second, then 30 frames moves half a second. You'll need to change this to 60 to make it a full second. However, if your project is in 30 frames per second, then 30 frames is already a full second. The project I've provided is in 60 frames per second, so we would change it to 60 here. The label button is a very intuitive change to make. You change the appearance, and you change that same text in the action. The fast forward button is also a pretty easy change. We're not going to change the appearance because the icon means fast forward either way. But let's change the speed from 5x fast forward to, 3x fast forward, or 2x, or maybe even faster, like 6x. Choose whatever feels right for you. Changing these playback speed buttons is pretty much the exact same changes you made for the clip speed buttons. You just change the number in the appearance, and you change the corresponding number in the action, and you are done. Lastly, the solo buttons. These ones require a little more effort to keep updated, and they'll be specific to your vMix project. Let's say we're changing this button to Solo OBS 2. The appearance change is easy, we just change the text. To change the actions on this to the correct input, we need to look at our vMix project. There are multiple ways to target an input in vMix. For this video, we're going to stick to input numbers because they're really simple to use. OBS 2, as you can see here, is input 2. So back in Companion, we'll change the input being targeted by the action to 2. But we're not done yet with this button because this button has feedbacks, which is as simple as clicking on feedbacks and changing the input targeted by the feedback also to 2. To run through this once more, let's take Solo Replay, which is currently soloing Replay A, and make it Solo Replay B instead. Replay B is input 5. So we'll simply go back to the button and update the action and the feedback to use input 5. And that just about does it. If you have questions about editing any other buttons, let me know in the comments or ask me in my Discord. So now that you know how to move buttons around and you can tailor buttons to whatever feels best for you, it's time for you to practice. Keep creating clips, keep playing out replay packages, and keep experimenting. Most importantly, keep getting faster. Speed is essential for replay op work. As far as what's next on this channel, I'm not entirely sure. I have ideas for more long-form content like this for topics like connecting Companion to a remote vMix replay station or best practices for vMix replay settings. But I have a lot of ideas for short-form content as well to quickly cover some individual tips and tricks in vMix replay. Either way, Keep an eye on my channel, hit that subscribe button, and let me know in the comments what kind of tutorials you want. Also, I'm available to work as a freelancer, so if you or someone you know ever needs an expert replay op in vMix or EVS, please reach out to me, prod@mitchellmorley.com. For now, have fun practicing, and I'll see you next time.